Metabolically addicted to sugar, no snacking, 60 grams carbs a day. That's part one.
Want to help make it easier for people. And so that's what I've been doing at my job, is I walk them through, here's the first step, here's what you need to do. And I love seeing the changes in people's relationships with food. It's just so amazing. Like people who are like, I'm never going to stop drinking soda. You take my soda away and like I could see like the daggers coming from their eyes at me. You saying I can't have my sweet tea. Like a year later, the same person will come into my office and say, "Oh, I just decided it wasn't worth it. I don't want to feel that way because for years I've been suffering and I've been tired and I've been irritable and brain fog and cranky." And when you get that metabolic sugar addiction, you start to cure it. You open your eyes to this whole other world that gives you a whole new relationship with food. And that is like my favorite part of this whole thing. When I see somebody get to that point where they don't even want it anymore, that's when I can check off a big win, for like healthy eating. Knowing the path is one thing, but walking the path is the other. And if you're metabolically addicted to certain foods, you cannot stay on that path. So we have to cure that metabolic addiction. And there's a science to it. And I love putting that science into practice. That's what I'm doing. Just in terms of the food, we just get it to where their body trusts fat. So that's easy. You just start your day with a high fat meal, whether you want to have it at breakfast time or lunchtime, doesn't really matter. But that's the time where sugar is at its most addicting. It does its most damage. The antidote, so like something simple would be what I have every day, which is cream and milk with a little coffee in it. So it's like probably like 400 or 500 calories. Most of it comes from the cream and it's raw and it's so delicious. That's the main reason is like it's so much better. It's grass fed. It has all kind of complex flavors in it, like butterscotch and stuff, because it has all kinds of more nutrition in it. It's mostly fat for breakfast. And then like, let's say somebody is a type 2 diabetic, they might need a tiny bit of like what I call the slow digesting carbs in there. So one of my favorites is Ezekiel bread because it's a sprouted grain, and those kinds are radically different as far as the way your digestive system breaks them down than the usual flours. So it doesn't cause the same amount of sugar spike. There's still a little sugar spike, but it's not the same amount. And that gives them that sugar so that those folks who really just don't have the receptors yet, or that need, they're so upregulated in their sugar receptors that they need a little bit of sugar, and they're going to be making it out of protein if you don't give them any. So you may as well give them just a little bit. So I give people like around, 60 total grams of carb per day when they're really metabolically damaged. Keep building meals for them. That's what I do. But the most important meal to start out is that breakfast. That's got to be mostly high in fat. I tell them don't snack. That's another battle. I really want them to just focus on building 3 healthy meals. And if you're going to have any kind of a treat, do it later in the day. But that's kind of part of the psychological part, the treat. That's phase 1 of the rehab, is to get to that where you're not snacking and you're getting 60 grams of carbs and no more.
Metabolically addicted to sugar, no snacking, 60 grams carbs a day. That's part one. My job? Help make it easier for people to eat healthier. Here is the first step. Dr. Shanahan says, people were like, "You take away my soda?" And I can see the daggers in their eyes. A year later, the same person, "I just decided it wasn't worth it. I don't want to feel that way." When you start to get that metabolic sugar addiction cured, it opens your eyes to this whole other world, gives you a whole new relationship with food, and you can get to the point where I don't even want it anymore. Knowing the path and walking it are 2 different things. If you are metabolically addicted to certain foods, you cannot stay on that path. So you have to cure that addiction first. And there is a science to it. Dr. Shanahan says, I love putting that science into practice. We get it to the point where their body trusts fat. You start the day with a high-fat meal. That is where sugar is most addicting. most damaging. The antidote to fat early in the day. Dr. Shanahan says, what I have every day is cream, milk, and a little coffee. 400 to 500 calories. The cream is raw and so delicious. Has lots of flavors. This is mostly fat for breakfast. For someone who is a type 2 diabetic, they might need a tiny amount of slow digesting carbs. For example, Ezekiel bread. It's made from sprouted grain. The digestive system breaks them down differently than the typical flour. Has a much lower sugar spike. This gives them a small amount of sugar because their sugar receptors are so upregulated, they need a little sugar. If not, they will make it from protein. But I keep them to a total of 60 grams of carbs per day. The most important meal of the day, breakfast, and it should be mostly fat. Don't snack. Focus on building 3 healthy meals. If a treat is needed, have it later in the day. The summary for part 1, no snacking, 60 grams maximum carbs. Annotated and summarized. Easy to share with loved ones. The description below the title for this video has these summary points.